So again, I'd like to welcome you to today's TechNet webcast. This is how Microsoft IT deployed the 2007 Office system. It's my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. We have Eric Bigasall here, as well as Steve Ray, and they're both program managers with Microsoft IT on the Messaging and Collaboration Services team. So Eric, I'm going to hand it on over to you and let you get started.
Great, thank you. Yes, my name is Eric. I'm here with my colleague Steve. Together, we were the two program managers responsible for deploying Office 2007, or the 2007 Office system, inside Microsoft. And so this is not a session that's going to give you just a comprehensive, broad overview of how to deploy Office and the complete tool set. What it is it's an honest, candid story about how we deployed Office and what lessons we learned. We've actually, even though it's a new product just now available to customers, we've actually been working with it for well over a year. So we feel like we've got a lot of experience and a lot of information to deliver about where we were successful, where we ran into challenges, how we overcame those challenges. So that's really what this presentation is about. Just to give you a quick breakdown of kind of the areas of expertise and responsibility between Steve and myself. I was kind of the overall program manager responsible for driving the project goals and schedule. Also owned the relationship with the Office development team, with whom we worked very closely. Steve is definitely our technical deployment PM. So he's responsible for actually customizing, configuring the build, and also all of the ways, and we'll get to the details, that we actually distributed the bits to users and everything that goes along with that. So with that, let's get started. Real quickly, just want to talk about prerequisite knowledge. We're not going to go into detail about any specific technology, so nothing needed there. However, as I said, we are going to be talking about our experience with an enterprise deployment of Office, and so a familiarity with enterprise deployments of client software and of Office in particular would be very helpful to understand and appreciate the presentation. So our agenda today is really to cover the goals of the internal deployment. Why did we do it? What were we trying to accomplish, aside from, of course, just getting the bits out there? What deployment vehicles did we use? How did we actually distribute the bits to users? And then the highlights of the deployment tool set that we found particularly valuable or that we leveraged in an important way. Not a comprehensive overview, but we're going to talk about the things that we leveraged and that we thought were key pieces of functionality in the tool set. And then a pretty rich topic, enabling file format compatibility. So as you're probably aware, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint 2007 all have new default file formats. And so ensuring that users can have a seamless experience in having Office 2007 clients collaborate with clients that are running previous versions of Office is definitely a big concern from an IT perspective. And we'll talk about our considerations and how we executed on that. And then finally, what are the big wins, the big business benefits to the 2007 Office system from a Microsoft IT perspective? These are more IT wins rather than end-user productivity wins. That's kind of the agenda for today. So let's dive right in. So first of all, top-level goals. These are kind of every bullet you see here are the kind of the most primary fundamental goals that we had in undertaking this internal deployment. The first one is our mantra: deploy as we expect our enterprise customers to deploy. The reason why that's so significant is that when we deploy Office as Microsoft IT, we want to do so in the same way that we expect our enterprise customers to deploy. The reason for that is because we see ourselves as validating that enterprise deployment experience. In other words, if we run into a deployment issue or roadblock, we want that to be representative of the same experience our customers will have. And therefore, the development team cares a lot about our success or failure in the early stages of development in being able to deploy Office. So if we have a problem, we're unable to deploy for some reason, that carries a lot of weight with the development team for the simple reason that the way we're deploying is exactly how we expect our enterprise customers to deploy. So we don't do anything strange or custom, even though it may be more expedient for us, because we want our feedback to the development team to represent the same type of experience a customer will have. Very critical. Second is to hit our deployment targets. I'll talk more about this on the next slide a little bit, but in essence, we are deploying at several milestones. So of course we deployed the final bits, but we also deployed several versions during the beta time frame so that we can get feedback, both for the deployment and our end users actually deliver feedback as well. And getting enough feedback and deploying at a true enterprise scale means that we have certain deployment targets that we want to hit as far as number of clients that we're deploying to. We were pretty aggressive about doing that, but we were very successful in meeting those targets. I'll talk about why and how we were successful in doing that. Next is to maximize the product feedback from users. So anybody that uses Office 2007, particularly in the beta time frame, has a reaction to the product. Either they have things they love, they encounter bugs, they may have had a task or a piece of functionality that they were very familiar with in a previous version and maybe have questions or are wondering how to accomplish the same thing in the new product. There are all types of categories of feedback. But the point is that everybody who uses that product has feedback. And our goal is to maximize the share of that feedback that we actually can capture. We don't want to lose that feedback. And so we did a lot of different things to make sure we captured the maximum amount of feedback possible. We had a website that made it very simple for users to give feedback. We offered monthly drawings with fabulous prizes for people who did give feedback. And then we made sure that we closed the loop with those users and made sure that they knew that their feedback was very valuable. Next one is absolutely critical, to ensure compatibility with line of business or LOB applications. There's no way we could have met our deployment targets if we hadn't done an excellent job of executing in this area. The reason is that we have a lot of applications, as I'm sure all of you do in your environments, that are used inside the company. And nobody is going to be able to install Office 2007 and use it if the applications that they use and rely on every day don't work with Office 2007. And so in advance of each milestone, we'll go into a lot more detail, but in advance of each milestone, we did a detailed test pass testing these applications against the latest version of Office 2007 to ensure that we had compatibility with all of our critical internal applications. Next, building solutions that leverage the Office 2007 platform. So great to have individual users using the product to do their jobs, and that's a critical piece, but also equally important to actually try out Office as an application, a solution building platform. And so we had a number of either tools that are brand new or new versions of existing tools that leverage in some form or fashion new functionality that was offered by Office 2007. And then the next one, which is part of what I'm doing right now, is to share lessons learned and best practices with customers. Of course, we have a job to do in terms of getting the bits to our users, but in doing so, like I talked about from the first bullet, we are developing our set of best practices, our list of things that we felt were very valuable, a list of things that didn't work as well, and sharing those with customers so that they can have a great experience in deploying and using Office. It's definitely one of our top level goals. And then finally, educating our clients, our users, on how to be more productive with Office 2007 functionality. So we don't consider success merely just installing the product on people's desktops and then saying, hey, go have fun. We know that just because you have it installed doesn't mean you're taking advantage of the new functionality. And so we worked with the teams that are developing content externally that are shipped with the product, like Office Online and Help and things like that. But also we have an internal team who we worked with to prioritize a series of everyday productivity education guides that are just quick how-to guides on how to get started in areas of the product we saw as key to improving key to improving productivity with our end users. We'll talk more about that as well. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about our beta deployments. This is one thing that makes us different, probably from a lot of other IT departments, and certainly from a customer deployment of Office 2007. But one of our key jobs as Microsoft IT is to deploy during the beta period, and to maximize and deliver that, to maximize feedback and deliver that feedback back to the development team so that we can get those fixes and that feedback incorporated into the product before customers get it. So our goals here are really to, as I said, validate that deployment guidance for enterprise customers. We want to make sure that the deployment experience smooth and that the guidance that we're giving to our enterprise customers around the deployment makes sense and works. And so that was definitely a key tenet for us. The next bullet, we have great test teams within the development teams. However, there is no substitute for real-world product usage. And by that I mean, rather than a tester banging on the product and trying to break it in different ways, actually have a regular person do their job using the product. That actually produces the highest quality, most relevant feedback. And the development team absolutely agrees with us, and that's a big driver behind us deploying beta versions of Office so broadly inside the company. We really believe that the product is not truly ready for shipping unless we've had a sustained period in which regular users, some of them are, of course, being Microsoft, some of them are very technical, but we also have a lot of very non-technical users. We have a legal department, finance department, HR, full of non-technical users, and their feedback is also extremely important. Next, leveraging the passion and beta tolerance of Microsoft. So it's a beta product, and it would be the final product if it were perfect. So the beta product does have issues, and it's our job to fix those, identify and fix those issues. So how do we get Microsoft internal people to actually accept any pain related to using a product that's not final, that does have bugs, that does crash occasionally, especially with the earlier versions? Well, in general, Microsoft users, Microsoft employees are very passionate about getting their hands on the new technology. And also it's seen as kind of like a Microsoft patriotic duty to make the product better by agreeing to accept a little bit of beta pain in order to use the product, to identify bugs, and end up with a product that's of very high quality. So we really do depend on users to voluntarily accept a little bit of beta pain in order to make the product better. So, but when we do that we don't do that in a reckless way. We provide a lot of guidance at each beta milestone. On the next slide, you'll see all the different versions of Office that we actually deployed. But to date, including the final bits, we've deployed actually 6 versions of Office. We've actually done 6 deployments of Office 2007 already. And in each one, the product was at a different stage of stability and performance. And so we communicated that very clearly, didn't hold back at all. We're very candid about letting users know what they could expect as far as stability and performance, and to provide some guidance on how they might use the product. For example, at earlier milestones, we were very clear that, that the product was only appropriate for usage on a secondary machine, that you had your primary machine, which was there for having a backup to get your critical work done in the event that you run into a problem with the product. Starting around Beta 2, we felt that the product was very appropriate for primary machines for just about any user. Definitely at Beta 2 TR, we were very happy with the product performance. And then finally, this beta deployment, the usage in the beta period, really gave us a chance to get test coverage on all of our other products that were coming out at the same time. Particularly the two I list here, Exchange Server 2007 and Windows Vista. So critical that we be able to test the scenarios that involve having these products together and using them together. And we got a lot of great feedback around those cross-product dependencies. So this next slide, you can kind of see across the bottom, these are the different versions of the different product milestones that we actually deployed. The DF4, the Dog Food 4 build, was deployed last August, and then RTM being just this last fall, a couple of months ago. You can see how quickly we ramped up as far as our number of client machines we deployed to. Started off with a very small number, and then at each milestone, we ramped up quite quickly. And today, as you can see, we have almost 100,000 client machines running Office 2007. So we're very pleased about that. And I don't want to take away credit for our team, but getting the word out was really enough. That there was tremendous passion for the product amongst our internal users, and all we had to do was make the bits available, and they but we will talk in detail about how we actually got the bits to our users in a couple of slides. Okay, let's talk about line of business application compatibility. I think this is an absolutely critical area for customers, and it was critical for us as well. As I said, we tested our line of business applications that had an Office dependency against every version that we deployed in advance of that deployment, so that we could give users a clear picture of which applications were compatible with with that version of Office. So our high-level goals are here. We want to ensure, obviously, that our line of business apps are compatible with Office. We want to ensure that we're testing the important scenarios and important functionality. We want to identify issues early so that we can get them fixed and addressed. We want to minimize our impact to users, to our help desk, and we want to ship the highest quality products possible. So all these things are really geared around making sure that from a line of business application perspective, we don't have any roadblocks to adoption. That nobody has to say, no, sorry, I can't install Office 2007 yet because this application I depend on is not compatible yet. We never would have had that nice steep adoption curve that you just saw on the previous slide if we hadn't done an excellent job in this area. The next slide is going to detail a little bit more around our more specific process and how we went about this. Gathering the requirements and scoping the program, as you see here, was critical to getting us set up for success. We use an internal application we call MS Apps, which is essentially just a database where we catalog all of our internal line of business applications. And with each application, we have a lot of data or metadata. And so we know which ones, for example, depend on Office, have an Office dependency, and then more specifically what part of Office those applications leverage. And so from that, we're able to understand very quickly, the number of applications that need testing as part of this process. In addition, prioritizing the applications was was really critical. The reason for that is we have a ton of applications. And so we want to make sure that we're giving the most attention to the highest priority application. The way we did that is we know from our MS Apps database the number of users for each application and the level of business criticality for each application. So from this data, we're able to determine what are our Tier 1 applications, or applications that simply must work with Office 2007 at each and every milestone, and then applications that were a little bit less important and that we could have a little bit more flexibility as far as that. Getting commitments from application owners and testers. This is critical because these applications are not all housed within Microsoft IT. We don't control them. We can't assign, we can't dictate to the application owners and testers in all cases. And so therefore, getting commitment in advance from the owners of those applications to our testing schedule, committing testing resources at the appropriate time was really critical to our success there. And what we found is that going from the bottom up didn't always work. It was really getting commitment from top-level management on down. Doing what was necessary to ensure testing and compatibility with Office with an organizational level commitment from the owners of those applications. Bug reporting, also critical. So great that we test all our applications, but we need to make sure that the bugs that come out of that testing are tracked in a meaningful way and also prioritized and fixed in an appropriate time frame. So as part of our MS Apps database, we have a mechanism for bug reporting. And so we can look at each application and see, hey, did this application pass or fail in the latest test pass? If it failed, what are the bugs associated with that failure? In some cases, the bugs were Office bugs that were assigned to the Office team, and especially in the case of our Tier 1 or high priority applications, given a very high level of priority in the Office development team to get those bugs fixed in time for the upcoming milestone release. In the case that these were application bugs, in some cases we had fixes that were necessary to be made on the application side. Then it became necessary for that app team itself to get those fixes in. And here we go back to getting commitment from our application owners to actually not only test but fix any application bug in the necessary time frame. That was critical. And then finally, for our end users, and I can't tell you how critical this is, publishing and updating our line of business application compatibility scorecard. So if I'm a user, I need a place I can go to, like a spreadsheet or a dashboard, which says I can look up the applications that I use on a regular basis. Be in one central location and verify that, yes, these applications that I rely on to do my job have indeed been tested and have been verified to be compatible with the latest version of Office 2007. Or no, it's not compatible yet, and I can have a place I can go to get more details on that, about when that application will be compatible. So absolutely critical area. We could not have been successful in our overall deployment without doing this. And a lot of times for customers, it's one of the most daunting tasks or obstacles to deployment. And certainly Microsoft is no different in the sense that it really does involve a lot of resources across the company as far as mobilizing the owners of these applications. We felt really good about our results in that area. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Ray, my colleague, to talk about deployment vehicles, how we actually deployed the bits to our users. Steve.
Hi, thanks a lot, Eric. Can you hear me okay, Eric?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
Marvelous. Okay. So deployment vehicles. Within our company, we have many routes to get our products out to our clients. And obviously, we have a large variation in technical skills amongst clients. Some would like it handheld and delivered to them, whereas others would just like a place to go and get it. So the first bullet here refers to our internal network of product servers. These are called DDS servers, or data distribution servers. And we have roughly 140 servers spread around the world. The purpose being to give everybody around the world a local or as close to local installation source as possible. These servers are split between two master sites in Dublin and in the US. And then they break down to around 40 servers, which we call hub servers, which contain quite a large section of our products. And then finally down to tail sites, which may be a site of 100 users. And they'd contain a very small section of the required products. However, as Office is a core product, it's something that's distributed throughout all our servers. So that's the first place that clients can go and install the product from. And no matter which avenue we take to deliver the product to the client, I'll just be clear that we are delivering the same image of Office all the time. So we don't have multiple customizations we need to manage. It's very clear cut. So the first place you'll find our builds going are the product servers. And we aim to have it on those servers within 24 hours of getting the code from the product group. So obviously we've got quite a tight turnaround there between being given vanilla code, customizing and testing it, and then replicating it around the world. The second avenue or vehicle that we use to deploy Office, in this instance at least, was alongside Windows Vista, which was obviously in beta deployment in parallel. And so using the replacement for RIS, the WDS service, we created a joint image of Windows Vista and Office to allow clients to install both products together if they wished in the three most common languages. Again, as I said earlier, this is using the same image that we use on our product servers. So there's no real additional work from our side here. We just partner with a peer team that are working on the Vista deployment. The third bullet here, and this is a key one for us internally, we do rely heavily on SMS internally to deploy software, technology and configuration changes to our clients. For us, in terms of the Office 2007 deployment, SMS was primarily used at the Beta 1 release to bring our numbers up and to help us reach our first milestone goal. And from that point onwards, SMS was the main technology tool we had at our disposal for ensuring that we maintained a common baseline of Office clients. It may surprise people, but the quality of the beta products that we get from the product group improve release over release. And even with Office 2003, it wasn't uncommon to get to the release of the product and find people still running Beta 2 because it was stable enough and they didn't see a need to move up to the latest version. And so we rely heavily on SMS to pull people up as soon as the next milestone's out. Within 2 or 3 weeks of it being released, we will then forcibly manage their upgrade experience via SMS. Because it was deployed via SMS, it allowed us to do some additional scripting in front of the installation, because we had the additional challenge internally where we had to manage the removal of any previous beta product. Obviously Microsoft Office, and in fact most products that I can think of, they're not developed with an awareness of how to remove beta versions of themselves. And so if we didn't script that removal, the installation would have just failed. So SMS allowed us that extra functionality that you wouldn't expect to see from someone going to, say, one of the product servers and running setup. So it enabled us to bring the baseline up with each deployment. In terms of Office, we didn't heavily leverage BDD. However, for the Vista deployment, they fully leveraged the BDD framework in the organization of their teams as well as the processes used. Moving forwards, we are replacing any joint Office and Vista work to be in line with BDD. but at the time it wasn't required for the core Office stuff we're doing, being as BDD is obviously its main focus is on OS delivery. If you could pop the next slide, Eric. Okay, so in terms of the deployment toolset that we used, one of the big advantages we saw with this new release of Office was the improvements in the deployment in the multilingual sense. No longer were we faced with two flavors of Office, a set of fully localized SKUs right down to every file, and then a set of language packs that could be applied on top of English. We now had this completely language neutral core, and then effectively the language came in the form of a language pack which created the resulting SKU. For us, this enabled a lot of improvements which we'll go on to in a minute to demonstrate, but it allowed us to create a combined source, so a combined build folder that our users could go and install from, that hosted, in our case, the 9 core languages we use internally. Now there's many obvious advantages to this. First of all, you're removing any duplicate folders by combining them. So all the language neutral components, you only have one instance of those. So you're saving space on your servers. You're saving time in terms of replication of that data around your network. And if you are delivering multiple languages to a client's machine, you're saving time on replicating that to their PC. The actual configuration of building a combined source was extremely simple, which Eric's going to run through. And it's as easy as drag and drop. And one cool thing that really impressed us was the fact that it could match the language required to the user's operating system's locale. So you only have one setup controller, setup.exe, one instance of that. When you run it, it will actually match the locale of the OS, whether you're running Windows XP or Vista, it doesn't matter, to the locale of the languages it knows it can install. If it can't find one, it will fall back to English. Otherwise, it will do the match for you, and it will display the installation language as that same locale, and then it will install the language support for Office in that same language. So it takes away the manual process on the user's point. One other great thing we saw was the fact that you can have a single customization. So unlike 2003, where you may have been dealing with 7 different physical products, 7 different copies of Office 2003 Professional, for instance, because they're fully localized, they are unique. Their product GUIDs are unique. And so when you create a transform for one, you can't necessarily use it, or you definitely can't use it against, say, the French version or the German version. But because now we had this single combined source with language neutral components, you can combine almost all aspects of Office as long as they don't relate to any given language, and that resulting configuration file can be applied to all of the installations. So you only have one configuration file to manage, which again can greatly reduce your overheads over time. This takes me on to the second bullet. So this isn't necessarily something new. I'm not going to call this out as a new feature. This is something you could have done with the custom installation wizard previously, or setup.ini for that matter. However, we did leverage within the Office customization tool, the OCT, which we go on to show you later, the ability to run pre and post installations or programs. Now, just referring back to the Office 2007 resource kit, although this functionality does exist within Office, the ability to chain additional installations together, they do actually state that it's not best practice to do so, because in doing so, you are adding risk to your installation of Office. And if one of your sub-installations fails for some reason, you risk other installations in that chain process failing. And it also makes troubleshooting harder. So although it does exist, due care should be taken before deciding to go down that route. However, we found it very useful for our purposes in that it enabled us to launch an instance of Internet Explorer at the end of the Office install, with the command line of a URL pointing to a thank you page on our intranet site. So we have an intranet property completely dedicated to the Office 2007 deployment with lots of key information up there. And we also have a thank you page we stored up on that site. So at the end of the installation, it will present the thank you page to the user, which enabled us to then deliver some key information to them, such as the importance of reporting bugs, key features they may find very valuable, training information, things that we wanted to reiterate that they may not have consumed in, say, the email they may have received. And the ability to call this as a web page means that we divorced whatever was on that page from our configuration of Office. So we could go and change that web page in an instant if we found we needed to add something to it. And from that second onwards, every installation to see that new thank you page. So that was something that we found valuable internally. So in terms of the third bullet here, the Office customization tool. For those of you that have deployed Office in the past, you'll be familiar with a number of the tools that shipped at the time, such as the Custom Installation Wizard and the Custom Maintenance Wizard, and obviously there's Setup.ini as well, which allows a variety of customizations. For Office 2007, they've combined all of the tools, with the exception of Setup.ini, into this single customization tool called the OCT, or Office Customization Tool. Its look and feel is very similar to the Custom Installation Wizard, so you shouldn't have a large learning curve when you look at this tool, and we're going to walk through it a bit later. It has the same functionality and features that the previous tools did. However, the resulting customization file it produces is no longer a transform, but an MSP file. So now, effectively, you have your customizations wrapped as a patch or product update. And there's multiple benefits to this. The first benefit is to apply those customizations to the build. It's as simple as just dropping that MSP file into the updates subfolder. Once that MSP is in there, no matter what it's named, it will be consumed by Setup when the product's being installed. So it makes applying the customization very simple, whereas in the past you'd have to edit Setup.ini and make an explicit reference to a transform file and then place that transform file somewhere. So now it's very simple to create an MSP and just drop it in. The other advantage with this is that you can now have a client who's already installed Office 2007 just double-click the MSP and it will apply the customizations to their machine. So for us with 2003, we created a very manual method of doing this by creating a mirror of our customizations using the Custom Maintenance Wizard. And then we had a batch file that the help desk could point users to, which literally just called the Custom Maintenance Wizard with the command line pointing to our CMW file. And the benefits of having that for the help desk was if they had a call from someone saying, faxing over the internet doesn't work for me, 9 times out of 10 it's because they've installed a copy of Office that we hadn't authored. They found it somewhere else, so they're lacking all of our settings. And rather than going through the costly troubleshooting steps, they could run this little batch file. It would get the user back up and running 9 times out of 10. Now obviously, now you just have an MSP file and point the user to that, so it's even more simplistic. One caveat I will call out is that for Office to be able to apply the MSP during installation, the machine does require Windows Installer 3.1, so you do need to make sure that that exists on the PC.
Steve, isn't it the case that not only are the customization files that you create with the OCT, but also any product updates themselves come in the form of MSP files and therefore can be dropped in the updates folder?
Correct, yeah. This is something that's another big sell. So in the past, as we've done it in the past, again, we'd rely on Setup.ini. We would have chained instances. In fact, I had a very manual process where I had, within Setup.ini, I was calling a chained program, which was ohotfix, which I'd expanded to a subfolder. And then I would drop raw MSP files in there. And so I didn't need to change Setup.ini anymore because it was always going to call ohotfix. And then the ohotfix engine would just apply whatever MSPs I threw in. So they've effectively reflected that model, but completely done out of the box this time. So you just drop any product updates you want into the updates folder, and it will apply the ones that apply. So if they say release an update that's only specific to the French components of, say, I don't know, Visio 2007, when Visio's installing, it will know if it needs to apply the French updates, depending on what you've selected to be installed. So it's got lots of intelligence built into it. So it should greatly reduce the management overhead of your Office images once you've deployed.
Great. Well, while I get the demo ready, Steve, can touch a little bit maybe on as far as replicating the package to our product servers, as far as allowing for time to replicate and also adding new languages after the fact?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. So obviously, as I say, there are great advantages of creating a single build folder with multiple language support built into it. However, with that comes a consideration that once you've put your initial folder out there, as we did, because obviously languages are released from Redmond in a phased manner, so we would have released, say, Japanese, German and English to our servers on the Friday it released to manufacturing. However, the following Friday, they would then have other languages for us to deploy. And so for us internally, we had to plan the replication of those additional languages to happen at a very much downtime. So we put the request into our replication team after working hours on a Friday so that we would have the quiet time of the weekend to get as many servers in the world updated with the additional pieces. The reason being that if you do decide to add another language to your build folder after you've already deployed and you've got active users out there running installations at the time you start dropping bits in, you do risk the users getting errors during their installation. Because obviously the setup engine will see that there's language support, but it may not realize that you haven't copied all the files yet. So you do need to bear in mind, if you are going to create this single source, you do need to bear in mind as and when you may need to make changes to that source and plan accordingly so it's outside of working hours.
Great. So that's actually a great segue into the next slide, which is a demo. We're going to walk through what it takes to actually add a language pack to your installation folder. So I'm just going to give you a quick demo of that, and then also show you how setup reacts to the presence of additional languages in that installation folder. And then talk a little bit about how clients can add additional languages even post-installation. Let me switch over to demo machine here. Steve, can you see that?
I'm just
So
looking.
Eric, we're just getting a gray screen here.
Okay. Let me.
There we go.
Yeah, nearly.
All right, I had it, and then how's that?
And we are up and running.
Great. Okay, so here I actually have two complete versions of Office in two folders, one English, one German. And I do not have Office on this machine at this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to launch setup from the English folder, show you what that looks like. Continue, and this window here pretty quick. Great. Okay, so here's our setup window. I'm just going to go ahead and click Customize, and notice there's no language options here. And the reason for that is that in the installation folder that I launched setup from, there's only one language pack there, which is English. Okay. Great. So now I'm going to go ahead and close this, get out of setup. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my German setup folder, and I'm going to select all the files, copy it, and I'm going to go over to English and hit paste. And what's happening now is there are a bunch of German-specific bits that are being copied, and as soon as Windows gets to the language-neutral bits, it's going to prompt me. And here we see these are language-neutral bits, so I could copy them over. It would be just fine. I'm going to go ahead and hit skip these three folders. Just to reduce the amount of copy time. But the point is that we've got common language neutral bits, and then we've got different language specific bits. And so I've now completed the copy, and now in one folder I have both English and German in that folder. And so what I'm going to do now is launch setup, just like I did last time, from the folder, and we'll see what happens. Let me hit customize, and lo and behold, here's the language tab, and I can see that setup has detected that I have two languages contained within this installation folder. And so it has a default, which is English. Then it also offers me the ability to install German. I could switch to German or include German. It's a multi-select and then just a checkbox. I want to talk just a little bit about the way the defaults work here. You can see here clearly the default is English. The reason for that is that Office Setup tries to match my client locale. And so right now my client locale is set to English. If I change that client locale to German and relaunch setup, let's see what happens in that case. Let me cancel out of setup, close this. Let me go over to Control Panel, and let's see, I want go to my regional settings. And so it's actually this guy right here. You can see it's set to, the current format is set to English, United States. I'm going to go ahead and set that to German, Germany. Click OK. Close out of this. And now I'm going to just launch setup again. Exact same setup. You can see right away that the setup is starting in German. And if I go here, sure enough, still got the two language packs installed, but now German is my default. So that's the way that setup decides what the default language to install. In case you're wondering, if I had set my client locale to a third language, say Japanese, and then launch setup, of course, if I have a Japanese language pack installed in my folder, it will default to Japanese. If I do not have Japanese in my installation folder, then it would fall back to English. That would be the fallback language in that case. And then after the fact, after I've installed, I can actually launch setup again, and it will boot me right to this page where I can add an additional language. In other words, it would have the boxes checked for the languages I already have installed, and I could just simply check the box for the additional languages I want, hit update, and it would add those languages to my installation on my client. So that's the way that works. Let me switch us back to our deck now. 1 second.
Just to add to that point around the multi-language options, if you do have a source on your server with, say, 9 languages like us, and you install, say, English, as I've done on my machine, if you just do customize from your add remove programs, that's launching setup from the locally cached source. And obviously the source that it's cached is the one that you chose to install, which is English. So you will not get all of the options to install, say, Japanese or German. You would have to relaunch the install from your original source, where all of that source exists, which makes sense because you wouldn't want Office to cache down 1.5 gigabytes of source files if the client has only asked for English. But that's a differentiation you should be aware of.
Yeah, that's an important point. That's actually a good thing to add if you decide that you'd like to do a thank you page like we did. You can add something to a section to your thank you page which says, hey, thanks for installing Office. If you would like to add additional languages, click this link, which is essentially just a link to setup that was just run. They can click that link, which would launch setup again, but now since Office is installed, it will launch in what we call maintenance mode and allow you to add additional languages. Let's go ahead.
Just quickly while we're on languages, some more functionality we've not touched on. Obviously, as I said earlier, setup.ini has gone away, So we've rolled all of the customization tools into one now, OCT. And if you want to look at it simplistically, setup.ini, which was obviously the text file that allowed some customization to be controlled, that's now morphed into config.xml, which takes a little bit more consideration because it is context sensitive being an XML file. However, it does allow a subset of customizations to be managed in there. And one of the cool customizations is you can actually set the language, the default language to install within an XML file. So if you wanted to, you could still maintain a multilingual source with 10, 30, however many languages in it. But you could, by calling a different command line option with setup.ini, you can say /admin file, you can call, say, german.xml, and that XML file would instruct setup to install German. Regardless of what matching it's done with the locale, that will override it. So you can also manage it that way, so still have a small source location and programmatically control what people get via which link they're installing from. So there's many ways to approach the whole language deployment question.
That's a good point. And on a related subject, I think it's interesting that whereas with previous versions of Office, Steve, didn't we have in our major hub sites, of course, we had practically the full range of languages, but in our smaller tail sites, because we were using separate installation folders for each language, we offered a smaller number of languages that were appropriate to that region. But in the new world of 2007, since we've got this one installation folder, all languages are available in all sites. Isn't that correct?
It is, yeah. I mean, there are downsides to that in our instance because it's taking more space on some of our smaller servers, but that's purely because of a design decision we've got internally with our replication service. It means that what we put on the major servers goes down to the smaller. So it has pros and cons, but for the majority of customers, it's all pros. And it gives our customers more option at the local sites as well that they may not have had in the past.
Great. Let's go to our second demo, and we're going to have Steve walk us through the OCT. I'm not sure how many of you out there have taken a look at the Office customization tool, but we're just going to give you a quick overview and then talk to maybe the factors that you might want to consider when you want to specify settings for your users and what would be the more appropriate place to do that, either in the OCT as part of installation or through group policy objects. So Steve will talk to that. Let me switch over.
So if you could bring the OCT up, thanks.
Let me switch my client locale back to English. I want to make sure that, I don't know how your German is, Steve, but just want to make sure that it comes up in English.
So just while this is coming back, so just to reiterate then, so there's effectively two tools, and I'm not going to delve into huge detail on this because it's such a large subject, we wouldn't have enough time to cover it. The resource kit for Office 2007 is pretty much fully posted now on the TechNet website, and it does have some excellent documentation. I've done 4 deployments of Office now since 2000, and I've got to say the documentation is very concise this time round. So it's all up on the web, and it goes through great depth as to what you can achieve in both the config.xml and or the OCT, and where using one versus the other makes sense. So while this is loading, so this is the Office customization tool you're seeing here. It is a very simplistic tool, and for those of you that have used, say, the custom installation wizard in the past, I don't think you're going to see any surprises here. In fact, the list of options down that side are probably word for word the same as you could have done in previous versions of Office. From my point of view as an Office deployment specialist, I don't have any problem with this because I've always felt Office has done a good job at allowing me to customize more than I possibly could need to. So the feature set is ideal. From an internal standpoint, unlike many customers, we do have an ethos of minimal customization within the product, such as Office. Reason being that the early deployment we're doing is aimed at giving quality product feedback to the dev teams, making sure the product is of the highest quality before it's released. And so to do that, we want as close to an out-of-box experience as possible. If we over-customized Office and changed everything we possibly could, it would make it very hard to identify if a bug has been due to something we've introduced or actually in the product. That being said, we would still follow the processes we recommend our customers do, which is to sit down with the key business representatives to discuss what is possible to customize, give ideas as to what makes sense to customize, and then get their input and suggestions. So we sat down with the key identified service managers within IT, so the person in charge of core email, person in charge of spam, person in charge of real-time communication, etc. Everybody that had some involvement with the Office client. And then we gathered all of their input, and that's what created our record of customizations. And that document went with us throughout the entire deployment, and it was revisited and revised at every milestone. So everybody was happy with how Office was going to look and feel when it went out. Those customizations, for a large part, were managed within the OCT. So within this tool here, if you can click on the install location for me, Eric.
Is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one. So within here, and like I said, they are very basic, our customizations. We'd enter our organization in here for the client. Under the next one, additional network sources, we would enter the location of our main server in the US. Now within Microsoft, we rely on a domain DFS routing infrastructure. And so we can send anybody to our US product server, which is called WAC Products, and it will redirect them to the closest location. And that redirection over the last year has improved right down to hub level. So I'd probably say 85% of our clients are redirected to a local installation source from the one UNC. So this allowed us to put a single UNC in here, which we knew would not change. For a product like Office, it doesn't get moved on the servers. It would stay in that folder forever. And the reason we do this is when we're posting our builds out there, we do find a lot of people will copy it to their desktop before they do the install, or they copy it onto an external hard drive because they want to do the install when they get home. And so you end up with all sorts of installation sources stored in the registry. And so by having this in here, if for any reason their LIS ever became corrupt, and for 2007, I'll just touch on that, the LIS is compulsory. In the past, you could configure it to partially cache the source. Now it fully caches the source. There's no option to stop that. It won't install unless it can cache the source. But there's still the instance where a client could find their source becomes corrupted, at which case it would refer to the original installation location, and it would fall over if it couldn't find that DVD or it couldn't find that CD or that hard disk it was installed from. So we'd put one location in here which gives us complete fault tolerance or near complete fault tolerance. Under licensing and user interface, within this box here, we'd obviously enter the PID key, which I've left out. I didn't think anyone here would want to see our PID key. And we, one thing I'd call out on this as well, which is fantastic. In the past, the PID key could be specified in the CIW or the setup.ini. However, in both locations, it was in plain text. It was a bit better hidden in the CIW, the custom installation wizard. However, anybody could go and run the custom installation wizard, open your MST, and they could see your volume key. And obviously, that's not doing the best job we could for you to help you protect the volume key. And so with 2007, they've made it so that once you've saved your MSP, if you ever reopen it, it does hash out the key, which it goes a bit further to protect your key from leaking or piracy. So we enter the key in here, and then we also remove the requirement to enter the end user license agreement. It's only a small thing, but we want the process of the installation to be as smooth as possible for the client. And so we've accepted the end user license agreement on their behalf. The next page we would go to is add installations and run programs. And within here we would call, for us internally, we chose to add in the Save as PDF and XPS add-in. For those of you that kept up on the news, you'll notice that it was removed from the Office product, and it's available now as a separate download. However, it's completely up to you as an organisation if you wanted that installed at the time of Office, just as any other product if you wanted to install anything else at the time of Office. So we actually have a post-install command placed in here for the Save as PDF and XPS add-in. And using the /quiet switch, this becomes a silent installation. So again, it gets back to having one seamless installation for Office that's not interrupted for the client. The next page we'd go down to is under Modify User Settings. And before we do anything else, if you could double click on Application Settings there in the setting window, Eric, and go into one of those, doesn't matter which. We're just going to flip one of the settings and just double click on one of those and then change the default option. So click Enabled and then click Apply or OK at the bottom. Okay, if you could now go across to the left-hand side and click on Set Feature Installation States. You'll see when you navigate away from that now, it's now put that in bold. And again, this was a request we made of the product group during development. It's very difficult. When they first gave us the product at Beta 1, these menus down the left-hand side, they all stayed the same. And for us, where we only made changes to certain pages, it made it hard for us to navigate quickly to where those changes are. So now they actually make it bold if there's been any changes whatsoever to the defaults within them. Going back to Modify User Settings, within there we did very little. We had a few things internally that we control, like limiting the number of online search folders that can be created, because our clients use email in cached mode. So we wanted to limit how many search folders are transferred to the servers if they ever go into online mode. But we do very little customization. We customize some of the instant messaging behavior within the products, the amount of presence information that's seen. But otherwise, it's very much light touch. The next page that we would have changed anything under is under Additional Content, Add Files. Within here, we had a couple of files we'd add. So we had some DRM templates to enable some default behavior within email and documents when people wanted to protect the content. And we also had a customized fax cover page. So the default page when you send faxes within Office is the medianfax.dotx file. And so we actually customized that internally, put our own Microsoft logo on it. By adding this file in, it replaces the default file Office put on the machine. So when they click to send fax over the internet, it will come up with the Microsoft fax page. But again, it's very basic stuff. We don't heavily customize. The next page, and probably the most heavily utilized, is the Add Registry Entries page. Because obviously, regardless of what options you can or can't configure under the Modify User Settings, you can nearly always find a way to configure the behavior directly using a registry setting. Whether it's documented or whether it's undocumented, quite often I will rely on tools such as WinDiff and do an export of my registry before and after making a configuration change. And that will allow me to see which registry value is being toggled. So we control quite a lot in here. We have a default research and reference service. So when people do an alt-click within an email or a Word document, it will actually search our intranet portal for internal information, which is useful to clients. And we also enable the fax service with a number of registry settings in here. Finally, we use the Remove Registry Entries page for the converse reason that during the deployment there may be things that we've pushed out, registry values we've pushed out, that we now want to turn off, such as verbose login within OneNote, which was useful when we were debugging, but at RTM, creating those large log files is not a good thing to do to the client. What I would say, and this is getting on to the second part of the demonstration here, you need to consider what you're configuring in the OCT, because what you configure in there gets applied during installation and installation only. And not only that, some settings, you should view them as effectively tattooing the machine. So if you're adding registry values, they're not necessarily going to be removed from the machine when someone does an uninstall. So if you've put something on there that possibly causes adverse behavior, you may need another mechanism to take those settings away, whether it's using the remove registry entries page for a redeployment of Office. For this reason, we ask that you consider carefully what makes sense to deploy within the build of Office versus what you deploy as a GPO. Now, there is some delta between what you can configure in the OCT, because the OCT consumes the OPA files, which you'll find within one of the subfolders of your source. GPOs obviously are built up from the ADM files, which you can download from the resource kit from the Office website, office.microsoft.com. The two aren't identical, however, they're pretty close. And the value of the GPO, obviously, for those of you that don't use them heavily, is that any setting you deploy with it, you can actually pull back. If you retire the GPO or delete it, it will then go out and remove that setting from the machine. And for us internally, the other advantage is we don't know where people are going to be installing the builds from. We'd like to think they're coming to our servers, but sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they will be getting this off of a friend's machine who copied it directly from one of the dev servers. And so they may not have the settings on there we want. So where a setting is of more critical importance to us, we will use a GPO to do that. And that's pretty much it for the demo of the OCT. Like I say, it's very light touch. We don't do an awful lot within that tool. So if you want to flip back to the deck, Eric, because I realise we're close on time.
Right.
So the next slide, file format compatibility. I wanted to take a bit of time talking about this quickly. Obviously, there's some new file formats shipping with Office based on the new OpenXML standard that's just been agreed in December. You do need to pay consideration to these new file formats in terms of your legacy clients. Indeed, even if you're not planning to deploy Office 2007, you have to consider other companies that you work with that are using 2007 or are migrating to it, and maybe sending documents in the new PPTX or DocX or XLSX format over to your company. And the story we have around this, which I have to say is much improved to the file format changes they introduced with Office 97. They've now delivered a compatibility pack. It actually comes in two parts. There's two components to the compatibility story. So for pre-2007 clients, such as 2003 and XP, there's a file format awareness update, which is needed on the machine, and that needs to be installed before the compatibility pack. And then there's the compatibility pack. And the way these two things operate, the FFA update enables your operating system and applications to recognize that a PPTX file is a PowerPoint file. That's as far as that logic goes. It just enables the recognition. It then passes that file to the compatibility pack to manage the opening of that file within PowerPoint. If you do not have the compatibility pack installed, the recognition goes as far as to tell the user that they need to download the compatibility pack, and it will give them a link up to the download page on Microsoft.com, assuming your company allows internet access to the machine. The file format awareness updates are not available as a separate download. They are shipped within the Office updates and have been since October of last year. So as long as your company is applying Office updates to the clients, your clients already have the FFA updates in place, and therefore they are already compatible, or 50% compatible. And some companies may feel that that's enough and they don't need to go to the cost of deploying the compatibility pack and are happy to rely on clients installing it as and when they open their first document. However, if you wanted to, you can deploy the compatibility pack as a separate measure. They are language specific, and there's one released for every language that Office has shipped in, and they are available from our website. We would recommend deploying the compatibility pack solution, file format awareness and compatibility pack, over over deploying your 2007 products configured in a state where they only save to the old file format. Obviously, that's a stopgap solution, forcing Office 2007 to save as 97 to 2003 format, which can be done in the OCT. In fact, you can probably also control that via an ADM template. But obviously that doesn't get around the fact that you may still have external people sending these documents in. And there are great advantages to using the new file format. I believe the official documented figure is a file reduction in size, file size reduction around 80%. However, I've seen Excel files at 3.5 megabytes go down to 300 kilobytes when they've been resaved as 2007 format. So there is advantages in moving to the new file format.
I could add to that, Steve, real quick. There are certain features in Office 2007 which are only available when you use the new format. For example, in Excel, the sheet size is much bigger. We have 1 million rows as opposed to 65,000 rows. And adding that feature requires the new file format. So to fully leverage the 2007 product, it really does make sense to use the new file format.
To help with your migration as well, there is a tool being developed at the moment. I do not believe it's been released yet. There's a preview copy on Microsoft.com, and it's heavily documented in the resource kit, called the Office Migration Planning Manager, OMPM. Indeed, if there are slide decks up on TechNet from IT Forum or TechEd, there were some very good sessions there by the program manager, Mike Jordan. This is basically a suite of tools that allow you to proactively scan your organization for possible file format issues or migration issues. So it will look through your legacy files and it will flag where you may have compatibility problems. You might have, say, macros that might not work anymore. And it will allow you to report all this data back via compressed CAB files, which can then be consumed within SQL. And there's a reporting manager that comes as part of OMPM. Allows you to run all sorts of reports to see if you have any areas that may need specific attention. And there is also a selection of tools that come with the OMPM kit that allow you to do migration or mass migration of files should you wish to do so. Or you could choose to just leave the files in their legacy format and allow them to be updated by clients as and when they're used. Because like a lot of companies, there may be data out there that isn't actually live data, it's just sitting on a server from a project 4 years ago. However, we provide those tools to allow you to make the right decision for your company. And that's all I wanted to go through on the file format compatibility slide. So I'll pass back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Steve. Let me just mention a couple things, additional things on file format compatibility. So we talked about the fact that there's a file format awareness update for Office 2003 and Office XP. I want to talk just real quickly about Office 2000. So it's a little bit more complicated. For Office 2000, for Word only, it's the same experience. There's a compatibility pack, and you have the same experience as we described. For Excel and PowerPoint, it's actually just kind of a standalone tool that's built into the Windows shell when you install it. So you can right-click on these files, and that gives you an option to convert the files from the 2007 format to the old format, or vice versa. After you convert it, say from 2007 to the old format, you can then, of course, open that file using Office 2000. So that's how that works. And for the Macintosh, there's currently no compatibility pack available, but it is in the works. There's a beta that will be publicly available for download starting in the spring, late March, early April, and then the final one coming out later in the year. And then finally, for mobile users, I know that Pocket PC editions of Windows Mobile 5, they will support the new file format by mid-year. Just to give you a heads up there. Okay, appreciate you staying with us. I know we're running a little over time. We just have lots of content to deliver. I only have one more slide before my wrap up here. Wanted to talk briefly about the IT business benefits. So these are from a Microsoft IT perspective, what we feel are the big wins in the product. One of them is quite simple, but it actually had a big impact for us, and that is that the availability of a new SKU called the Enterprise SKU. The reason why this is so valuable for us is I have up there less products to deploy. What I mean is that the Enterprise SKU is actually Professional plus OneNote plus Groove. And so previously we had to handle those as 3 separate deployments, or risk a kind of a custom glue to glue them all together, but we chose not to do that. Instead, we have this Enterprise SKU, which we can get can take care of all those products, Professional plus Groove plus OneNote, with one deployment. So that, from an IT perspective in deploying the products, that's much more efficient for us. Secondly, the improved deployment tool set. So we talked about the big advantages of multilingual deployment. We talked about patching and how easy that is by dropping things in the updates folder, and we talked about the one customization tool. So we think that those are big wins. Next is Groove. Now, Groove 3.1 kind of wasn't really, I think, officially fully integrated into the rest of the Office suite, but for the first time, Groove 2007 is. And we think that fulfills kind of a key niche as far as how users want to collaborate. It's excellent at doing cross-firewall collaboration, for example. So anytime you have anytime you're collaborating with people, with customers or partners, say, people or who are regularly outside your corporate firewall, Groove works through the firewall, and so therefore has a leg up over SharePoint in that sense. In addition, while we think SharePoint is fantastic for posting documents and collaborating that way to a big audience, we think Groove is excellent before the document gets to that state. So what I mean is a relatively small group of people can collaborate very rapidly on a document or set of documents using Groove, and then finish that by publishing to SharePoint when the document becomes more stable. Next is the new XML file format. So we talked about it a little bit, but it has several advantages that we're excited about from an IT perspective. One of those, as Steve mentioned, is the reduced file size, which translates into reduced storage costs. It really is pretty dramatic. And it also, with smaller files, we're talking about less bits going over the wire, so less of a load on the network, which is pretty exciting. Also, stability. The product is much more robust and handles corruption much better. Whereas with the previous file format, if the file was corrupt in any way, the whole file was corrupt. In the new format, it's compartmentalized, and therefore any corruption can be confined to just that piece, and the rest of the document can be recovered successfully. So that's actually a big win. And then security. The new file format is designed with security in mind from the ground up, and therefore it's inherently more secure, and we feel better about that from an IT perspective. Online resources, we're pretty excited about the amount of resources out there. Office Online, we think, is a huge upgrade over the previous incarnation. Lots of video demos. The menu to ribbon mapping tool. So I haven't talked, this has been an IT-focused talk, but any of you who have looked at Office 2007 at all, I'm sure saw right away that the old menus are gone in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, the big applications, and been replaced by a new user interface, which we call the ribbon. In general, the ribbon has been very well received by our users, and the ramp-up time has been much lower than we expected, which is great. However, in some cases, there are certain commands that users are accustomed to using in previous versions that they have trouble finding in the ribbon. And when that happens, there's a great tool that we make available to our users. It's right there on Office Online, where it presents, like, I think it's a little flash type of application, really lightweight, where it shows the menus for Office 2003. And you can go ahead and choose a command in the menus that you're familiar with, and it will then tell you how to find that exact command using the ribbon. So very helpful for our users. And then in addition, we've got these, as I talked about briefly before, these employee productivity education guides, which have been produced by an IT team internally, but we also make these guides, these quick get-started guides, available to our customers through IT Showcase. So you can go there and check those out. We think they really do a good job of covering the most important areas of the product and doing it in a lightweight way for users who don't want to sit through a long training but just want to get up and running in a few minutes. And then finally, an area we're really excited about is reduced development costs. So if you wanted to create a dashboard or a any kind of a web-based report before Office 2007, that definitely required development resources and more technical knowledge. With Office 2007, we've got web parts and dashboards that use Excel as their authoring tool. So that's very exciting because there's a lot more people in the company who have a good knowledge of Excel than have development knowledge as it relates to dashboards and web reports. And so you can actually, just by creating your data and your reports in Excel, you can then publish pieces of those Excel workbooks to SharePoint, to SharePoint Office Server 2007, and now they become web parts and dashboards. And you could do that all without any technical development knowledge, just with Excel knowledge. And then with SharePoint-based forms and workflow, it becomes even richer to be able to, the workflow and the forms really can act as glue to put a whole process together. And the workflow is a great experience for putting real logic around business processes, from a very simple thing like routing a document for approval or ensuring that a key person has to sign off on any changes before they're published, to something more custom and complex. All these are available as part of, you can configure them in client applications, but then publishable to SharePoint and Office Server. So we think that's going to reduce our development costs in that area. We're really excited about that. So to summarize kind of the key takeaways from our presentation here, one, we want you to know that although the product is brand new to you, we internally in Microsoft IT have been deploying and working with the product for well over a year, and so we feel like we've done a good job of validating that enterprise deployment guidance, and we feel very good about the tool set that's available. Secondly, we think that the deployment tool set itself really has made things easier from a deployment perspective. And we talked about that as far as the multilingual deployment experience being a lot easier, the unified tool for customization and maintenance. There's many things in the tool set which we feel not necessarily a revolutionary leap from the standpoint of a whole new set of tools, but a great evolution of the tool set addressing some of the key areas. Thirdly, the file format change was something that, frankly, we were nervous about, concerned about. We wanted to make sure that our users could continue to collaborate while we had a deployment in progress, and we had a mixture in our environment of 2007 and 2003 clients. We found that the compatibility pack, the file format awareness update, really did an excellent job of making that a smooth transition. So we were very pleased that any user pain or frustration that we were concerned about, those risks were really mitigated and eliminated by that functionality. And then finally, as I just covered in the previous slide, we really do see significant business benefits from an IT perspective to deploying the Office 2007 system. And that wraps things up. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for hanging on through an extended session. Much appreciated. We're happy to address your questions. Let me go ahead and check our question queue.
Eric, and while you're going ahead to take a look at those questions, I'm just going to go through a quick wrap-up slides here, and then we'll get to those questions for everybody. I do want to get a survey posted for everybody before we start answering questions live. So as you all see, there's a lot of great information that's been posted, and if you haven't done so already, you can print a PDF of these slides. Just go into your file menu in your upper navigation bar, and you'll be able to print these out. Or else you also will receive an email tomorrow, a follow-up email, and I'll have information about viewing today's webcast on demand. You'll be able to download this as a Windows Media file, and that email will also include a link to the downloadable PowerPoint of today's webcast as well. So as Eric mentioned, if you have any questions for him, go ahead, submit those now. If you haven't done so already, just hit that Ask button in the lower right-hand corner. We're going to get to those in just a moment. I will point out that we do record these webcasts, so if you'd like to see anything that's been previously recorded, anything coming up, they're all posted right there at Microsoft.com/webcast. If you have content ideas, we'd love to hear from our audience, and there is yet another URL there that you can talk to us at. And then today's webcast was presented using the Microsoft Office Live Meeting technology. So there is a free 14-day trial. You can go to Microsoft.com/presentlive to get that. And we do have a survey coming up here. I do want to point out that your feedback is very valuable to us, so if you can take a moment and fill out the survey before you log out, we do appreciate that. And by doing so, you're going to be automatically entered into a drawing to win this great little Zoom digital media player. So a little bit of an incentive there, but really your feedback is very valuable to us. So just take a moment. You can hit that little registered online area or all other registrants. That'll take you right into our survey, and just take a moment, fill that out before you log out. We really appreciate that. And Eric, I'm going to hand it back over to you and Steve and let you guys wrap up with these couple of these questions we have in the queue.
Okay, thanks. So I'm looking through some questions. I'm going to pick out a couple which I think are maybe representative of questions more of you may have. Steve, I'm looking at a question from Brian. I'm wondering if you know the answer to this one. He says, adding files in Office 2003 has problems with version checking of the additional files. Will Office 2007 have similar issues when Office 2007 patches are released? That's something you could
that is a good question, and obviously not. I would say no, but until the first patch comes out for Office 2007, I can't say I've done it. However, I would not imagine there will be versioning issues with the patches because it's the way the product's been designed. To manage the application of the patches in the patch folder post-installation, and that's just being handled by the standard patching model. So I would not imagine there should be any problem with versioning.
Great. Yeah, of course, we would have more to say to that once the first big patches come out for Office 2007. But to date, we're very happy with the way patching works. Let me go to a question from Stuart. When will viewers for Word, Excel, and if possible, Access be made available? I do not know if there are viewers for Office 2007 that are in the works. I'll have to find that out. What I do know, however, is that the standalone tool that's kind of integrated into the Windows shell that I talked about in the context of compatibility for Office 2000, that also applies to the viewers. So what I mean by that is, let's say I've got the Excel Viewer 2003, and I download this standalone conversion tool from the website. I can right-click on that XLSX file, say that I get from an Office 2007 user. I can right-click on it, and using that compatibility pack tool, I can convert it to an XLS file, and then I can open that in the Excel 2003 viewer. So you can actually you don't have to wait for 2007 viewers. Again, I'm not sure if they're if and when they're coming out, but you don't have to wait for that. You can simply download this conversion tool and use that in conjunction with the existing 2003 viewers. So that's how that would work. Here's a question maybe you can answer, Steve, from Don M. how can you check your clients to verify that you have the file format awareness update installed?
Okay, the way we did it and the way we were told to do it, because for our initial deployment of file format awareness updates, this was before it released, and this was where they were still a standalone entity, a patch in its own right. And so the logic that we built into our SMS package was to validate the version of the MSO.dll file. And so we knew what the given version number was once the update was applied, which I think was, for us internally for 2003 clients, it was something like 11.0.8223 or something. However, that was the beta version we were using. I would say the version you should look for would be the minimum version you'd see if you apply the latest security updates. And in fact, the guidance that the product group give, if you go up to the compatibility pack, is to ensure that your clients are up to date in terms of Office updates. And so the best guidance is to make sure your clients have the latest Office updates installed. And by doing so, you know that they have the compatibility pack. If you wanted to be doubly sure, you can validate on a machine that has the updates installed. And then you can just check the MSO.dll, because that is one of the key files it updates. And as long as it's the given version that your test machine is showing, then you know that it's present. And you can also validate it by trying to open a PPTX file or something, and you should see the prompt to take you to the internet for the compat pack.
Right. I was going to say, empirically, you could just rename any file with the extension PPTX, XLSX, or DocX, and you'll see the icon image change. In other words, the part of what the file format awareness update does is it registers those extensions and has different icon graphics associated with those new extensions. So should be immediately obvious that the new 2007 file format extensions are recognized by your client.
Okay. There's one here from Ted asking, did our users require much help finding this menu to ribbon map in Office Online? I have to say, for us, the education component was a key piece of our deployment, and so we were very clear on our website as to what information we wanted to take users off to, and that was one of the key elements of the education. I'm not saying that it didn't take users a small amount of time to get accustomed with the new UI. You'd expect that from anybody. However, we did rely on directing them to that graphic up onto the internet site.
Great. Yeah, just to piggyback on that, we have an intranet website which really pulls together all of the Office resources we think are critical for our users to know. We talked about the thank you page, which is one aspect of it, but we have a much more extensive site, and that link to that particular mapping tool is very prominently featured in our intranet website. So we don't rely on users happening upon it by navigating around Office Online. We actually link directly to it from our intranet website. Great. Let's see. Any other questions jumping out at you, Steve?
There's one here. I don't have an answer for it, but Chris is asking if there's any white papers outlining WAN deployment of 2007 or use within a Citrix environment. I'm not aware of any personally. However, I would imagine that sort of guidance would be under development, either as part of BDD or from within the product group. There are a number of, talking outside of a white paper, there are a number of fantastic improvements in Office, which we haven't had time to touch on. One of them is the ability to now deploy the local installation source separately from running the installation. So now you can use SMS or another delivery system to drizzle down over a very slow link the local installation source. And you can take months doing this to your 100,000 computers, and then you can hit the go button at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning knowing that the installation will kick off for everybody because they already have the source. So there are a number of improvements that allow for that. I'm not aware of deployment over terminal services because I don't have expertise in that area, so I can't comment on that. But we can look to possibly find some links and provide those after the session up on the site maybe.
Great. Let me jump to a question from Harrison. Does the compatibility tool work with Windows 2000, or is it only for Windows XP? I don't know that the answer to that question directly, but Harrison, if you go to our slide in the deck that links to the compatibility pack information, that you can also search for it as a download on Microsoft.com or Office Update. It will tell you the OS requirements for that compatibility pack. I would be surprised if it didn't work with Windows 2000 because I believe that is a supported OS for at least Office XP, which is supported by the compatibility pack. So I'm pretty sure the answer to your question is yes, it should work with Windows 2000, but you could verify that at the point of download for the compatibility pack. Let's see. So a question from Amber. Is there any way to get a PowerPoint of slides depicting our demos of adding the language pack or the OCT walkthrough? If so, where can it be located? Amber, I don't think we'll have a PowerPoint deck doing that. However, our whole presentation will be available as a Windows Media file on demand some point after the session, and both of those demos in their entirety will be part of that Windows Media file. So hopefully that would meet your needs.
There is a question that's not here that I'm going to answer, an imaginary one, and that's is there a white paper to back up what we've been rambling on about? And there will be a white paper which will detail a lot of this stuff, possibly in a bit more detail, coming out very soon. I'm not sure, did you cover the date on that already, Eric?
I didn't cover that. It was in the slide. I don't know if you caught it, but that's by the end of the month, the end of January, we will have a detailed white paper out on our client deployment. Steve and I were the main subject matter experts for that white paper.
There's a question here from Dave. Can you provide an example of a common LOB application compatibility fix and how it was distributed? I'm not aware of any fix that had to be distributed. Obviously, our LOB testing environment was very much a dynamic entity all the way through the deployment of Office. And so fixes, I think it's fair to say a lot of the fixes were either implemented at the back end, because a lot of our applications are hosted, or they required changes in Office, possibly due to product defects. We did see the largest amount of attention from our testing was around Excel, but I'm not aware. Are you aware of any specific client-side updates that we needed to deploy, Eric?
Yeah, I could think of an example. Both of the examples I'm thinking of fall into the category of features that were deprecated or no longer installed by default in Office 2007. So whereas in 2003, for example, you could depend on, as an application developer, on the Office web components being installed in the machine, or in the case of Outlook, CDO, which I think stands for Collaboration Data Objects, which is a component of Outlook that was installed with Outlook. Those are no longer installed by default with Office 2007. So those applications broke if they assumed the presence of those components on the client machine. So in those cases, the fix was to have the application check for the presence of those components, and if they were not installed, to install them. And in many cases, those components, installation of those components was incorporated into the installation of the application itself. So that would be kind of a category of application fixes that came out of 2007. Let's see. So Ted asks, would it be possible to see the intranet website set up for users? Having a good site appears to be a key success factor. That's an interesting point. I tell you what, I will look for a forum in which we could possibly share that, either screenshots or one thing we've discussed but not yet made a decision on is would it be valuable for customers to package up our website content and make it distributable for customers? We feel we've done a good job, not of necessarily authoring a lot of our own help content, because we feel that's redundant. There is a lot of great content out there, but by having a kind of a portal site which pulls together content from multiple sources into one central digestible location. So thanks, Ted. We will take a hard look at that, how we could make that available to you.
There's a question here from Gary P. asking, can the help and education stuff be hosted internally, as some companies restrict internet access significantly? I do know that within the OCT, under Modify User Settings, there is an option to go and create your own URL for the Microsoft Office Online service. I've not used that myself, and I can only recommend looking within the resource kit to see exactly what that URL does, but that may allow you to point to a different web entity. I don't know if that means you will get the same customization, because obviously I think the question's pertaining to taking an entire copy of the online Office Assistant site, which would be huge. This may just be a way of directing users' queries to an internal site, but that would need further investigation. And we could possibly take that offline. Our email addresses are on the front of the slide deck.
Great. Let me read one from Bill Walter. Is there a single location you can go to on the Microsoft website to get a go or no-go list of Microsoft applications that have no problems with Office 2007 and ones that will need an upgrade, like Dynamics CRM? I myself I don't have firsthand knowledge of where that page exists as far as an externally facing page. That's something I'll have to check on. I'll have to check on that. Yeah, Bill, if you want to send me mail, I'd be happy to reply to you once I've checked on that, so I can get that link to you, because I'm sure it exists. I think we've covered all of them that kind of apply to the broad group. I want to thank you for your time and hanging with us for such an extended period. Hopefully you found the information valuable. You have our email addresses on the first page of the slide deck. So if you think of any questions later, feel free to direct them to me or Steve.
Excellent. Well, I just want to remind everybody as well that your feedback is very valuable, so if you could take a moment and fill out that survey before you log out, we do appreciate that. I will remind you again one more time, you can watch your inbox tomorrow, and we'll have an email with information about viewing today's webcast on demand. You'll be able to download it as a Windows Media file, and that email will include the link to the downloadable PowerPoint of today's webcast once again as well. So that being said, I just want to extend a special thanks to both Steve and Eric. So great job, you guys. And that concludes today's TechNet Live meeting. So thank you, everyone, for joining us.